We'll now look at another aspect in connection with databases and data. Data that is stored in a database always belongs to or is owned by a user. A user is an individual or an application that needs access to or manages the data in a database. A database is typically accessed by many users. Each user is associated with a username and password. To start accessing a database, you must log in with a valid username and password. Now, the pool of users that can access the database can be divided into different categories, primarily based on their job function. We can have jobs such as end users, programmers, operators, administrators, and depending on their job function, they would require the appropriate access to the database. Now, this slide mentions a number of different users. Here we have 4 users. 3 of them are what we call as regular users of the database, and one of them is an administrator. Now, the administrator account or the administrator of a database has a username of sys. This user is created always when the database is created. Now, the other regular users of the database are the user HR and Scott. These 2 users are predefined in an Oracle database, and all you really need to do is know what their passwords are, and you should be able to work with these accounts. Now, the fourth account that is mentioned on this slide, or the fourth user mentioned on this slide, is that of MV1. Now, MV1 is a regular user of the database, and the reason that this user's name is mentioned on this slide is because many of the tutorials and hands-on practice exercises on the Oracle Coach website reference this user, and there is a script available on the Oracle Coach website that allows you to create this user within the database. We now look at the definition of the word schema. A schema is associated with a user. Every user has a schema, and a schema is a logical collection of all the objects that belong to a user. Now, if you look at this diagram, here we have a user whose name is HR. Now, this user might have many objects, which are tables, views, triggers, synonyms, indexes, packages, constraints, procedures, functions, and so on. Now, if you logically group all the objects that belong to a user, what you get is a schema. A schema does not physically exist, but is simply a grouping of the objects that belong to a user. Every schema has a name, and the name of the schema is the same as the username. We now look at what is meant by structured query language. Now, we know that a user interacts with a database through the relational database management system. Now, in order to access the database in a relational database management system, the user needs to speak a language which is known as structured query language. This language is a high-level language that is used to interact with an Oracle database. In fact, SQL as a language can be used when interacting with all relational database management systems. The other relational database management systems available are SQL Server, Sybase, IBM's DB2, and what is common to all of these relational database management systems are the way in which you access it or the way in which you interact with it using the structured query language or SQL. Users write SQL statements which are accepted by the relational database management system, which would in turn either respond with some output or would perform an action within the database. Now, SQL has a number of sub-languages. The sub-languages are the data definition language, abbreviated as DDL, data manipulation language, abbreviated as DML, data control language, which is DCL, transaction control language, which is TCL, and the data retrieval language. What you also have on the right side of this table are the different statements that form the language, the sub-language. For instance, the create, alter, and drop SQL statements are all part of the data definition language. They allow you to define an object. The insert, update, and delete statements are all data manipulation language statements. They allow you to manipulate the data inside a table. Grant and revoke are data control language statements. They allow you to grant permissions on objects and actions within the database. Then you have the commit and the rollback statements, which define what you want to do with a transaction. And then you have the select statement that is used to retrieve or query data from a table. Now finally, we'll have a look at the different tools which are available in Oracle. The two commonly used tools are the SQL Star Plus tool and the SQL Developer. SQL Star Plus is a command line tool. It offers a character user interface, which would mean that you would have to type in every single command to get a response from the database. And the SQL Developer tool is a more recent tool provided by Oracle. It's a graphical tool, and many of the tutorials available on the Oracle Coach website make use of SQL Developer. It's increasingly growing in popularity, and it's a good idea to get a little bit of hands-on practice with SQL Developer. I hope you have found this tutorial useful. For other videos, tutorials, and articles, you can visit the Oracle Coach website. Thank you for your time, and thank you for listening.